Starting at number 10, we have Elohim. Angels within the Elohim are known for their commitment to victory of good over evil. And there's one famous archangel, Haniel, who leads the Elohim according to Kabbalah, which again is a mystical branch of Judaism. Now, it may come as a surprise since Elohim is a name used for God according to the Hebrew Bible, but the term can also be translated as angels based on the context. Number 9 brings us the Ophanim. Members of the Ophanim rank of angels never, ever sleep because they're constantly busy guarding God's throne up in heaven. And they're also known for their wisdom. Their name comes from the Hebrew word ophan, which means wheel, and this is due to their description inside of the Hebrew Bible, specifically in the book of Ezekiel, especially in the first chapter, because they're described as spirits that have their spirits encased in a wheel that move along with them. So when they move, the wheel moves with them. Now in Kabbalah, the famous archangel Raziel leads the Ophanim. The next type of angel we're going to look at number 8 is the Erelim. Now these angels are known for their courage and understanding. The famous archangel Sathkiel, he leads the Erelim in Kabbalah. Sathkiel, now that's a pretty interesting word, even the spelling of it. Well, that word there means knowledge of God, and the archangel Sathkiel is known as the angel of understanding and compassion. Next up at number 7, we're looking at the Hashmalim. Now the Hashmalim are known for their love as well as their grace and their kindness. And the archangel Zadkiel, a very popular archangel in Judaism, he leads this rank of angels according to Kabbalah. Zadkiel is thought to be the angel of the Lord as described throughout the Old Testament of the Bible, who shows a lot of mercy and kindness, especially in Genesis chapter 22 of the Torah when the prophet Abraham is preparing to sacrifice his son Isaac. Next, I want to look at the Malachim. Members of the Malachim rank of angels are known for their beauty and mercy. Now in Kabbalah, their famous archangel Raphael leads this class of angels. Throughout this video, you might start recognizing certain names for angels, whether it's from the Protestant Christian belief or Catholicism. Getting back into the list, at number 5, we have the Beni Elohim. The Beni Elohim, they focus a lot of their work on giving God all of the glory, all of the praise. Now in Kabbalah, it says that the famous archangel Michael leads this rank of angels. Michael is mentioned in major religious texts more than any other named angel, and he's often shown as a warrior who fights for what's right to bring glory to God. As a matter of fact, when you break down the name Michael in Hebrew, Mikael, that means one who is like God, and in some translations it translates to who is like God in a question format. Now in the book of Daniel chapter 12 in the Hebrew Bible, it describes Michael as being the great prince who will protect God's people even during the struggles between good and evil at the end of time. The Ashim come next at number 4. Now the Ashim is a rank of angels that is the closest to human beings. The Ashim focus on building God's kingdom here on earth. Now in the Kabbalah faith, their leader is the archangel Sandalphon. And not only are these angels closely associated with human beings, but their class is also the closest level to the human beings in terms of power and wisdom and abilities. Seraphim coming at number 3. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of this one before. Seraphim angels are known for their work for justice. Now the Kabbalah says that the famous archangel Chamuel leads the seraphim rank. Now the Hebrew Bible records a vision of the prophet Isaiah that had seraphim angels near to God in heaven. And the passage says, above him were 6 seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their face, with 2 wings they covered their feet, and with 2 wings they were flying. And they were calling to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. And you can find that from the book of Isaiah chapter 6 verses 2 to 3. Next up at number 2, a very popular angelic rank, cherubim, not just in Christianity or Judaism, but also in other various New Age beliefs as well. The cherubim angels are known known for their work helping people with the sin that separates them from God so that they can draw closer to God. Now, the archangel Gabriel leads the cherubim according to Kabbalah. Gabriel is mentioned numerous times in Christianity as well as in the religion of Islam. But in Judaism, though, the cherubim angels first appear in the Torah, and they pop up right after humans brought sin into the world while they were in the Garden of Eden. And the passage in the book of Genesis goes as follows. After God, drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way of the tree of life. And you can find that in the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 24. The Chayot HaKodesh comes in at number 1. Now, the first and the highest type of angels is called the Chayot HaKodesh. Now, they are known for their enlightenment, as well as they're responsible for holding up God's throne and also for holding earth in its proper position in outer space. The Chayot HaKodesh, they really emanate a very powerful light, and they often appear like they're covered up in fire. The famous archangel Metatron leads the Chayot HaKodesh, not to be confused, by the way, with Megatron from Transformers. Maybe that's where they got the name from, thinking about it now. But either way, that belief is most commonly taught in the mystical branch of Judaism known as Kabbalah. Number 10, we have social injustice. Now, social justice is one of the main things promoted in Judaism, and the Bible has focused a lot on the oppressed poor people and how justice should be done to them. According to the book Ecclesiastes 5 verses 8, it says this, and I quote, "If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violent perversion of justice and judgment, do not be amazed at the matter, for he that is higher than the highest is watching," which of course implies that God is judging this. Moving on to number 9, magic and sorcery. Magic and sorcery are haram in Judaism, and people are forbidden to practice them. The Bible also warns people against the belief in the powers of magic, incantations, and lucky charms. And in ancient times, people practiced sorcery and believed that they had control over uncontrollable things. Now, the commandment against false prophecy tells people to trust in their own ability to make decisions about their lives, not to just trust in these incantations and magic spells. There's even passages in the Bible saying that witches shouldn't be allowed to live, things like that. So yeah, very forbidden. Number 8 brings us lies. It's a very common practice by many people to just lie for their own benefit, but lying is prohibited for Jews as well. The book of Psalms, chapter 5, verse 9, describes people who lie as, "For there is no truth in their mouths, their hearts are destruction, their throats are open graves, they flatter with their tongues." Also, in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 16, it says, "You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor." So, in a nutshell, telling lies is a big sin, it is haram, and it should not be practiced by Jews. The next haram thing is legal corruption. Judges are considered the representatives of God on earth and are expected to act fair and wise. It is haram for judges or legal representatives to take bribes and adopt partiality because it is the perversion of justice with the Lord, which is strongly prohibited in Judaism. Judges are advised to model themselves on the impartiality and wisdom of God and make the right, just decisions for human beings. Next up at number 6, we have blasphemy. Blasphemy means contemptuously using the name of God, and it is haram in Judaism. In ancient times, people accused of blasphemy were actually stoned. According to the book Jeremiah chapter 28 verses 16 in the Bible, it says this, "Thus says the Lord, I am going to send you off the face of the earth. Within this year, you will be dead because you have spoken perversions against the Lord." So clearly it is forbidden to do so. Moving on now to number 5, worshiping false gods. People used to worship more than one god in the past. Agriculture was their main source of living, so they developed the concept of agricultural gods of fertility and worshiped them, as well as various other gods were created. And Judaism prohibits idolatry and considers it an act of betrayal of God's relationship with humanity. Now, when we look in the book of Exodus chapter 20 verses 2 to 4, we find these words, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have other gods before me, and thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. So yes, it is haram in Judaism to visit and worship false gods and abandon the Jewish heritage. Number 4 leads us to incest. One of the things that both modern science and ancient people agreed on is that intimate relations between closely related people could result in biologically flawed offspring. Yeah, whole lot of stuff can happen there. In many societies, including the Hebrew society, strict laws existed and still exist where they put restrictions on who people can marry and be intimate with. It is said in the book of Leviticus chapter 8 verses 16, none of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. Men are forbidden to have intercourse with their daughters, granddaughters, sisters, mothers, and vice versa because it is just straight up haram. Also, homosexuality is a big haram thing in Judaism. The Bible speaks strongly about homosexuality. It says in Leviticus chapter 18 verses 22, ye shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. And by the way, the term abomination comes from the Hebrew word that means disgusting thing. Traditionally, Judaism has seen that homosexual male intercourse and not homosexuality in and of itself as contrary to Judaism. And this belief is still maintained by Orthodox Judaism. So having the homosexual desire isn't haram, but just acting on it according to Judaism is haram. Number 2 brings us to laying with animals. It's also said in the book of Leviticus chapter 18 verses 23, ye shall not have intimate relations with any animal and defile yourself with it, nor shall any woman give herself to an animal to have intimate relations with it. It is a perversion. Now, back in the day, some tribesmen, they used to perform these terrible acts with animals, but it is considered one of the worst haram things in Judaism. Now, number 1 leads us to child sacrifices. Now, if you were asked what's the most precious thing in your life that you would protect at all costs, most people will say it's their children. Yeah. Well, people of ancient times, they were also no different. But they did do some terrible things when it came to children. During the bad times, they used to actually offer their children as a sacrifice to whatever god they were worshiping, especially the eldest male child. And this was done as a last desperate plea for help. Now, the Bible forbids Jews to sacrifice their children. In the book of Leviticus 18 verse 21, we find this passage. You shall not give any of your children to sacrifice them to Moloch, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. At number 10, we have the Dybuks. A Dybuk is a disembodied evil spirit that, due to its sins when it was alive, it wanders aimlessly until it finds a body of a living person. And when it finds a body, that's when it possesses the new body's soul, and it creates a separate personality inside that person and causes a whole lot of mental illness. Now, people with nervous disorders were taken to a rabbi who believed he could actually cast out the Dybuk through an exorcism. Number 9 brings us Asmodeus. According to Zoroastrian and Jewish legend, Asmodeus is the prince of demons, and he appears in the book of Tobit, one of the ancient Jewish religious books, where he torments a woman named Sarah. Now let's just hold on for a minute, guys. I'm just thinking, why is it that when it comes to horror movies and scary stories, there's always a Sarah getting tormented or killed? Should I be worried though? My wife is named Sarah. Okay, Asmodeus. If you're watching this, back up. I'm warning you. Don't mess with me. As the legend goes, Sarah was married to 7 men in succession, and Asmodeus slays each husband on their wedding night. Sarah's 8th husband, Tobias, ends up outsmarting Asmodeus on his wedding night, and he enjoyed a long marriage with her. Moving on to number 8, we have Golem. The myth of the golem originates in the idea that human beings might be able to form living creatures from clay, just like Adam was formed from clay by God. The most famous golem is the one made by Jewish mystic and philosopher Rabbi Judah Leo, who was the Maharal of Prague, who inscribed a clay man with the word emet, meaning truth, and then he spoke the divine name and brought him to life. The golem protected the Jewish community from persecution, but ended up becoming too difficult to control. It became very dangerous, so the rabbi just decided to erase the first letter of the word emet, leaving the word met, which means dead. Number 7 brings us Leviathan. Now, Leviathan is this massive sea creature, and the Leviathan is referenced throughout the Hebrew Bible, and according to tradition, it was created by God at the beginning of time. Now, Leviathan has a counterpart, which is a land creature, and that creature is known as Behemoth. And in some versions of the legend, Leviathan is the female mate of Behemoth. Leviathan is often an embodiment of chaos, and it threatens to eat those who are damned. There's also a Jewish legend that says that in the Messianic era, the Leviathan will be killed and the righteous people will end up eating its flesh. Number 6 brings us to the fiery flying serpent. The fiery flying serpent is mentioned by the prophet Isaiah in the Bible, and the term translated as fiery serpent, seraph, appears in the book of Isaiah to signify the seraphim, and the singular of seraphim is seraph. Isaiah also sees them in a vision, each of them having 6 wings, and they flew in the presence of God. But the term fiery serpent in other contexts is also mentioned. In the book of Numbers, the Israelites, they start to complain about not having enough food and water, so God sends fiery serpents to attack them. But the Israelites, they end up begging for forgiveness, so God tells Moses to put a copper serpent figure on top of a rod, and anyone that looks on the rod, they will recover. So we see that the full scope of the fiery serpent's abilities is shrouded in mystery, making it all the more scary. Halfway in at number 5, we have Mazakin. The Mazakin are invisible demons that pester individuals. Mazakin, they are lower level demons though, and they're actually types of demons that you can encounter in your daily life. They don't necessarily do much harm because they rarely possess people, but they tend to only attack if they are angry or they're just generally unhappy. Rather than try to get rid of them, they say the best thing to do is just learn to live with them. Either way, if it makes itself visible, yeah, that's definitely going to send some chills up your spine. The being at number 4 is the Nephilim. According to one interpretation of the book of Genesis chapter 6 in the Hebrew Bible, in the early generations of humanity, there were some divine beings that became very attracted to human women, that they came down and they ended up mating with them. And then the offspring that they produced are known as the Nephilim. These semi-divine giants, they roamed the earth for generations and they tormented people. But what happened to them after that? Well, nobody knows for sure. The being at number 3 is the Shamir. The Shamir is a supernatural being with power to cut through stone, iron, and diamond. It's mentioned throughout the Talmud, and the Shamir was created right before the first Shabbat or Sabbath, just as God finished creation. It's said that Moses used it to engrave gemstones in the high priest's breastplate, and King Solomon also commissioned a search to find one for the use in the construction of the temple. And the Shamir is said to have lost its powers though at the first temple's destruction. The scary being at number 2 is Lilith. In Jewish lore, Lilith is a female demonic figure and was actually the first woman ever created before Eve. She was feared because she was believed to slay women in childbirth and steal their babies. She was also known for her uncontrollable sexuality. She would force men to sleep with her, and she did this just so that she can get pregnant and give birth to produce more demonic offsprings. The creature we're going to end off at number 1 is the Estries. Estries are a type of vampiric being who also take on a female form. Mentioned in Sefer Hasidim, Estries preyed on Jewish citizens and had to drink blood to stay alive. Estries could also fly if their hair was unbound, but binding their hair would stop them from flying. And these beings are very hard to get rid of. It is believed that burying them isn't enough to get rid of them. No, you needed to pack its mouth with dirt and then bury it, or you could also decapitate it or burn it.